I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and it's time to get wealthy. You're going to learn exactly what you need to know and do to finally achieve the level of financial success you desire and you deserve. The tech industry has been seen as bulletproof as a career strategy, offering high-paying jobs, growth opportunities, and innovation. However, in the past few months, what we've seen are tech titans like Facebook, Amazon, and Twitter experiencing massive layoffs. So, if you're one of those employees, or perhaps you had decided to look into tech as a career strategy, what should you be doing and what strategies should you be employing? Well, I'm excited because today we have a guest on who's going to share exactly what you need to do to recession-proof your career in tech. So here are our 3 takeaways from today's show. First, a career in technology does not necessarily prevent you from experiencing disruption in these uncertain times. Next, you really need to identify the industries and opportunities that are going to benefit from this disruption. And then finally, you've got to be agile and you have to upgrade your skills. And here to share with us some specific strategies that you need to employ are Kanika Tover. She's CEO of Career Hub LLC based in Washington, D.C., and she is also the author of the book of the same name. She's been interviewed on many platforms, and that's why I'm excited to have the conversation with her today. Let's welcome Kanika Tover to Get Wealthy so she can tell us how to get wealthy in tech. Welcome to the program, Kanika.
Thank you for having me. How you doing today?
Well, I'm doing great. And as I shared with you, the reason that I thought this was so timely a topic to have is because I've watched you, I follow you on Twitter, and you're always sharing real actionable ideas and strategies for people to get into the tech industry because it does pay, what do I want to call, attractive salaries and have opportunities. But the first question I have for you before we get into this conversation is, you've had a great career in tech. What is the catalyst for you wanting to share with other folks how they too can prosper in this field?
Yes, I've been in the tech industry for over 17 years, and I really enjoy being in tech, especially being a Black woman. There's not a lot of people that look like me in the industry, but I utilize my platform because there was not an actual roadmap for me when I got into the industry. So I really enjoy educating and inspiring and helping people understand how to navigate those challenges, whether they're already in the industry or if they want to break into the industry. There were not a lot of women. There were not a lot of Black women when I got into the industry, and there wasn't a whole lot of Black people just in general. So I felt like during the pandemic was a good time to really talk about how to navigate those career challenges, because at the time, a lot of companies were offering a lot of amazing incentives and programs for, the underrepresented groups like, Blacks, Hispanics, women, and the LGBTQ community. So I thought it was just a great opportunity while we were shut down, just to use that as a platform to really educate people about the process.
Excellent. And it is interesting. It's like when we solve our own problems, that really is an opportunity to create value for others. And on Get Wealthy, the framework for our formula for success is mindset, strategy, and execution. And I want to give that perspective, that framework for what it takes to be successful in tech. So I want to begin with mindset. And the question I have for you to begin with is, what type of mindset do people who aspire to have careers and who may already be in a career and may be experiencing being impacted by this reception, what kind of mindset do they need to have?
I mean, that's a very good question. So, being in tech, just in general, I'm going to start with like just getting into the tech industry. You need a mindset that is really, you have to continuously learn. That's how you're going to continuously earn. So I always tell people this industry, tech, or even if someone that has experienced a layoff, they're going to have to be able to be resilient enough to keep up with the times because we're moving at a fast pace. I know we were talking about AI earlier, and there's just so many technologies that are coming out so fast. So I think being able to navigate company layoffs, some people have been in companies for 15 years, 20 years, 10 years, and they may haven't been able to shift their mindset into being a brand. So in my book, I talk a lot about how we have to shift our mindset from being an employee to being a brand. And I think when we shift our mindset to being a brand, we create endless opportunities. We become unstoppable. So the same way we look at celebrities who have personal brands and they navigate challenges to get new contracts and new deals with playing with a sports team, or maybe someone is getting a deal with a record label. We as professionals have to create a mindset that we are a brand, and a brand needs development. It needs marketing. It needs to be upskilled constantly to stay in competition with everybody that's learning all these amazing new technologies.
You really touched on an area that I think is very important, and that is that our whole economic framework has really changed from that of the employee for life, right, and staying for years and collecting that pension, to really, if you look at specifically in the disruption that we've been going through, right? You mentioned COVID. Now what we're seeing, economic downturn, we're seeing layoffs. The question I have for you, however, is, it's one thing to create a brand, but I think that what advice would you give for people on, if they do have that on old mindset, what is the first thing they need to do in order to start changing it?
Yeah, so this is execution, right? We talked about mindset. We talked about developing a branding mindset. And in order to do that, you're going to have to do some things that are going to create a sustainable and a very solid, successful brand. So the first thing I tell people is they're really going to have to focus in on building their career roadmap. What does their career look like for them? So they're going to have to identify, what am I weak in? What skill sets do I need to work on? What training do I need to identify? What are the things that I know that is cutting edge that I have been, sitting on the sideline watching everybody talk about, but I haven't took the opportunity to learn them. And the next thing is, once we learn these new skill sets, we got to put ourselves out there, create a solid LinkedIn profile, create a solid resume. How are people going to know that you know these new technologies or these new skill sets if you're not putting yourself out there, marketing yourself on social media, on LinkedIn, on several different job board sites like Indeed and ZipRecruiter and USA Jobs? If you want to get into the federal government, you're going to have to put yourself out there. And the last thing is, you're going to have to build a network for your future, not your past. You're not going to build a network for your old you. You're going to have to build a network for your new you. So building alliances, building relationships, finding a career coach or even a mentor that can take you to the next level.
Well, it's interesting that you said that, because, finally, the last point that I wanted to make just about mindset is, what are some of the common career mistakes? Because I feel like, we learn best from mistakes than we do successes, right? So what are some of the common mistakes that you see folks who are already in the tech industry making when it comes to career planning?
Yeah, there's a lot of mistakes that people make, especially for the newbies that are trying to break into tech. And even for some of us that's been into tech for a period of time, they have gotten a little stale, got a little stagnant. Some of the actual the major mistakes is people are pretty much focusing on not knowing that they can do it. They're focusing on a mindset of fear, and they're focused on listening to the news. So, the news, with the company layoffs, with what we see on social media, they're thinking that it's not obtainable because of the statistics and the numbers, because of the number of people that are laid off, the lack of minorities that are in the industry. So a lot of people feel like, I can't do it. Like I can't learn this new technology. I'm a teacher, or I'm in HR. I don't think that I can actually learn how to code, or I could learn how to understand what artificial intelligence is. So the first thing is that we have to focus on shifting our mindset to understanding that it will be a learning curve, but it's not something that's not obtainable.
That's good. I often say that growth mindset really, what we're talking about is having a growth mindset and seeing these problems as opportunities. And that's exactly where I want to go next, Kanika. When we come back, I want to talk about some specific strategies that our audience and folks who have a desire to still thrive, what do they need to do in order to still thrive during this disruption? So folks, when we come back, we've talked about mindset, and certainly you've gotten some insight there. But when we come back, we're going to talk about the specific strategies now that you need to take in spite of all this economic uncertainty. What do you need to do to thrive?
Let's be honest, as successful women, we're crushing it. Maxed out 401k and Roth IRA? Check. Aggressive savings and investments? Check. Yet, the freedom our success was supposed to buy can leave us stuck on the six-figure hamster wheel, watching retirement slip further down the road. There's another way. Get coaching courses and community at wealthyu.com.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Deborah Owens. This is Get Wealthy, and we're talking about recession-proofing your career. I'm sure that you've heard a lot about, specifically in the technology industry, well, really in all industries, what we're seeing is contraction and we're seeing layoffs. But specifically today, what do you need to do to still thrive in an industry where we're seeing a lot of disruption, and that is in tech? And joining me today is Kanika Tolver. She's author of Career Rehab and also has thrived in the technology industry herself. So Kanika, I'm so glad that we're having this conversation. And I do feel like I'm so glad you really kind of double clicked on mistakes is being fearful and, listening to all the uncertainty. And if you were to really believe what you hear in the news, you would begin to think that there are no opportunities in technology. So with that in mind, what kind of advice would you give someone who is in the technology industry right now and perhaps feeling like they could be in jeopardy? What strategy do they need to be employing?
That's a really great question. I think the first thing is we have to turn our anxiety into accomplishments. We have to really focus in on turning our anxiety into accomplishments. And when I say that, I mean that we have to really understand, what can we control? There are things that are completely out of our control. We understand what's going on with the economy and what's going on with the recession and company layoffs, but there are some great things that we can control. And the first thing is that I want to encourage people to understand that there are so many other opportunities outside of big tech. I think we have to switch up our job search strategy. Some job search strategies that were working 2, 3, 4 years ago, they're going to have to be modified and enhanced. So I want people to know that there's so many amazing technology opportunities in some of these types of industries. And some of these industries include the federal government contracting industry. The federal government has a lot of opportunities to hire tech professionals. They actually have announced that they would love to, get some of those big tech professionals that were laid off and bring them into federal government contracting or into the federal government directly. Then you have healthcare. The healthcare industry is always hiring. I mean, we definitely know that the healthcare industry is an industry that's always hiring and thriving, and they need technology professionals. We have industries like finance, we call it fintech, but financing and banking is definitely a great opportunity for looking for opportunities. And one of the other areas that people don't really look at is the hoteling and hospitality industry, like Marriott or Hilton. There are always opportunities for people to work at those corporate companies as well. I think shifting our mindset to thinking that only opportunities exist in big tech is something that we're going to have to shift fast, because there's so many opportunities that are out there that we have to change the way we were thinking about our careers.
That's good. That's good. And that is what we hear in the media, right? About all these companies in tech laying off, and maybe you need to be shifting your strategy in terms of the industries that you're in. But what I think you've really shared is tech is a skill set that can be used in all types of industries.
Yes.
And so with that in mind, one of the other areas that we're hearing a lot about that you mentioned in the last segment is just about artificial intelligence. And I really feel like that is a growth area. And yet what we're hearing is that artificial intelligence is going to take away all of these jobs. In journalism, we're hearing chat GPT, which, by the way, I absolutely love. And that too could be another reason for disruption and uncertainty. But if we had that growth mindset, what we would be thinking about is, okay, so how do we get involved in that industry, that type of tech specifically? What advice would you give someone about taking their existing skills and enhancing them so that you are positioned to go into what are going to be growth areas of tech?
Yeah, I think that that's a great point, is identifying your transferable skill sets and understanding that a lot of the things that we already have accomplished, they can actually be applied to the technology industry. So I think a lot of times we don't even realize that we use technology every day, even when we're not in tech. So when you use any type of computing system, a database, when you are, creating Excel spreadsheets, PowerPoint decks, you may be in a whole different industry right now, but those are still technology skill sets that can be applied to the technology industry. I don't want people to get fearful about AI replacing their jobs or replacing them, so specifically in tech. I think if you can't, beat them, you might as well join them, right? So if you are fearful of that, then you need to absorb as much information about AI as you possibly can. That means getting books on AI, even if it's for beginners. I think it's important to also take training courses on AI too. So AI, they've been talking about AI for some years. And I think now with these new tools and these new technologies that have come out, I think people now are really taking it seriously. But sometimes we can't always get ahead of the technology. But the great thing is that we can actually learn different programming languages that are associated with the buzzing technologies that are out there. So I would say, don't worry about AI replacing you or replacing your job just yet. But I will focus on what are the other areas in tech could I join, like cloud computing, like cybersecurity, like project management. there's so many other amazing areas throughout the technology sector that are untapped, that people have not really looked at their current skill sets and said, what can I bring to the table? What are my strengths? What are my passions? And identify a technology path and go forward and just, knock it out the park.
Well, it's interesting. You brought up a couple of things there, just about, getting books and getting into and learning more about AI, regardless of what field you're in. I think it's important. However, I do feel like oftentimes, if you have that old mindset, you begin to think that, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to go back to school and I'm going to have to get another degree, a master's in AI and something like that. When in reality, the technology changes so rapidly. So what insight or strategy can you give our viewers around enhancing their skill set, adapting and acquiring this new knowledge and skill base without it taking, making a huge investment in another degree or that type of thing?
Yeah, really great question. So people think that they need to go back and get a college degree. Those days are pretty much over with. I'm not saying that you should not get a college degree in technology or in computer science or information systems management. I think right now we're in a time where we're in a digital age where you can pretty much go and take a course on different platforms like Udemy, Pluralsight, Coursera. You can actually sign up for a 6-month boot camp, and you can just take that time and dedicate to learning something in tech. The companies have lowered their educational standards and qualifications where people are transitioning into tech with no 4-year degree anymore. They're looking at certifications. If I would encourage anybody to do, I would really encourage them to focus in on getting certifications, building hands-on experience in that specific area, and creating a project, maybe 1 or 2 projects to show employers what you've built, what you've created, what you've learned. That is sufficient enough. And when you build your professional network, then you can start marketing yourself out there. So going in and getting a master's degree, if you already have a bachelor's degree, it may not be necessary. But if that's your choice, it's still going to make you even more marketable.
That's great advice. Because what I find far too often in our Wealthy You community is people really feeling like, oh, in order for me to make more money, I've got to have this degree, I've got to have that degree, I've got to have this degree. And then they have the student loan debt, right, to show for that effort and not necessarily getting a return on investment, which is finally just talking about strategies. You talked about putting together a portfolio, and in your book, you talked about being a brand. And so I want to talk just a little bit about what are some strategies about initially creating this brand for yourself? What should folks be thinking about?
Yeah, so this is really important because you can't market or sell yourself into a new opportunity until the brand has been developed. And guess what? You are the brand, you are the product, you are the service. We have to look at ourselves as products and services. We have to look at ourselves as little CEOs for our careers, right? So the first thing is you have to have a solid resume. You have to have a solid resume, and you have to be able to tell your career story through that resume. You have to build a solid LinkedIn profile after you have a solid resume. And after you have a solid LinkedIn profile, you're going to have to make sure that you are posting and sharing your career story on various social media platforms, sharing your journey, whatever you're learning in tech, share it on LinkedIn, share it on Twitter, share it on various different social media platforms, because recruiters are looking for people that have more than just a resume. They're looking for people who have certifications, a portfolio, who have projects, who have a YouTube channel, who have an ebook. pick one piece of content, create it on a regular basis, and push it out there to the world.
That's great strategy. And you know what I love about what you just said, Kanika, is that is exactly how I found you. Yeah, Twitter is, I don't really market on Twitter, but I like chopping it up on Twitter, right? I like having conversations. I like going kind of outside of personal finance and having conversations. And that's exactly how we met. I think I met you through Minda Harts, who, yes. You and her are always chopping it up about
that's the homie.
The kicks, right? Yeah. Like your Nike kicks, right? And so that's so I think that not only is that great advice, but I think you exemplify the advice that you're giving. And now that's one of the reasons we're having this conversation today is because of how you've applied that strategy yourself. So when we come back, I want to go into execution. We've talked about mindset, we've talked about strategy, and now I want to talk about execution. What are the things that people need to do right now based on the conversation and the advice that you've been giving them? And we're going to cover that, folks, when we come back. So, folks, it's not enough to just change your mindset and say, okay, I'm no longer going to be thinking like that employee who's going to get that golden ring. It's not enough to say, okay, I'm going to start thinking about strategies. I'm going to consider a new resume and LinkedIn. It is all about execution. So when we come back, that's what we're going to be talking to Kanika about.
Are the only bins that will accommodate larger rollerboards.
They put 10 in here?
10, and you don't come out till you die. And you eat him, you hoop 10.
Oh my God.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Deborah Owens, and we're having a fascinating conversation about what you need to do to thrive and prosper and position yourself in spite of all of the negative talk that we're hearing about the economy and recession. And here to help us recession-proof our careers is Kanika Tolver. She's author of Career Hab, the book, and we're going to continue our conversation with her and go right into execution. So, Kanika, we covered a lot of ground, but I feel, and I state this every show, knowledge is not power. Knowledge correctly applied is power. And so how do we now get our folks to take action? And so to that end, if there's someone who's listening to us and they're like, yes, that's exactly how I'm feeling, like I need to do something, what's the first thing they need to do if they're going to position themselves to thrive in this economy?
Really great question. So information without implementation is incomplete in my book. So information without implementation is incomplete. So if you're gathering a lot of information online about technology, breaking into tech, or learning new technologies, but you're not implementing anything that you're learning, you're going to continuously be in an incomplete status, right? So I think we can overdose on information and we can lack implementation. So the very first thing is that we talked about having a LinkedIn profile and having a solid resume. You're going to have to focus in on applying to jobs and building a solid job search strategy. That's like one of the first steps of execution. The resume is not going to do anything on its own unless it's optimized correctly online and recruiters reach out to you. So I think it's important, to focus in on going on Google and searching for technologies, companies currently hiring. So what I do is I go on Google and I put in technology companies currently hiring, and then I sort by the last week. I go and I filter by the last week or the last month. Then I go through various different articles and I find companies that are promoting that they're actively hiring technology professionals. I create this list, whether that's a spreadsheet, whether that's using a Word document, whatever you desire. I pull those company websites. And what I do is I try to go through those company websites by going to their career page and identifying, are there any opportunities that are in alignment with my skill set? Because we know who's laying off, but we need to know who's hiring. So I want to know who's hiring. So I do this on a weekly basis. And there are startup companies and there are so many other industries like finance and banking and pharmaceutical companies that are currently actively hiring. And people are publishing this information through articles and through different data sets. So I want to know who's constantly hiring throughout the month of March, throughout the month of February. And I want to make sure that I am applying to those companies and I'm creating a profile on their website. The second thing is that I'm building also relationships with those recruiters at those companies. So now I know who's hiring. Let me go find recruiter X at company X. So I'm utilizing LinkedIn to introduce myself to recruiters at the companies that are actively hiring. I'm building a template message and I'm inboxing recruiters and I'm letting them know, hey, I applied to this opportunity. Here's my resume. Here is the link to the actual job that I applied to. I would love to talk to you about this opportunity. Maybe we can have a phone screening or introduction message. What you're doing is you're helping the recruiter do their job, right? Because in this time, they're getting a lot of people that are trying to get opportunities and they're going through lots of resumes, but they're looking for people who have a solid online profile that they can say, okay, let's bring them in for an interview. And the next thing is focusing on preparing for the interview. The interview is showtime. It's the stage. It's your career stage. It's your time to show up and show out. We like to go see Beyonce on stage, but this is your opportunity to show up and show out on stage as well.
I love that. I love the way you put that, show up and show out, Kanika, because I really feel like a lot of these interviews now are happening online and virtually.
Yes.
So I really would like if you could give our viewers just some tips on how to show up and show out virtually during an interview.
Very, very good. So I love virtual interviews because we don't have to feel so pressured to be at an office on time. We don't have to feel so pressured to necessarily, feel like we have to dress completely from head to toe. So the first thing is you want to make sure that you are reading the job description and you fully understand how does your skill sets and projects align with what they're hiring for. Be able to tell the story. The first thing that I do is I get on Zoom and I record myself and I practice interviewing. So I go back and I watch myself on video and I either get a friend of mine to join me to help me, he or she may ask me questions, or if nobody's available, I ask myself the question on video and I look back at myself on video and I say, Kanika, you got to stop this right here because you keep saying, or Kanika, you're not fully explaining your experience in a very clear and concise way. So I use Zoom to watch myself on video. Preparing your environment is one of the most important parts of this because you have to make sure that you are in an environment that is quiet, that is not really busy. busy meaning a busy background, and you want to make sure that you have a place that has good lighting. All of these things are important because this is your stage. This is your time to shine. So making sure you have good Wi-Fi connection. And then the last thing is understanding the technology you're going to use the day of the interview. So making sure that you know if it's going to be StreamYard, if it's going to be Zoom, if it's going to be WebEx, making sure you have all of those technologies installed on your machine prior to the video interview. Those are just a few
Wow.
tips.
Wow. I'm speechless because perfect practice, right? Perfect preparation and practice really is how you're able to set yourself apart. And I think, Kanika, the most important thing that you shared in everything is that it's really designed so that you're not just trying to wing it, that you have really thought through and that you are mastering the stage as opposed to worrying about what question's going to be asked or how are you being viewed. I think you're saying that you really in this day and age need to rehearse what it is you're going to convey during these interviews.
It's a production. I mean, because you're competing against so many other amazing applicants. And guess what? You want to stand out. So one of the things that I encourage people to do is to make sure that a dose of their personality comes out on the career stage. People want authenticity. People want to know your education, your experience, but they also want to get to know you. They don't want a robotic person coming on camera rehearsing their resume. They already read your resume. They want you to be able to tell the story of your resume. So I look at a job interview on video as like a full production. The same way I tried to prepare for this interview is the same way that I would try to prepare for a job interview. So it's very important to smile. It's very important to, show them who you are, because they're also looking for a behavioral fit and a cultural fit. And that's a whole nother conversation.
Behavioral fit and a cultural fit. And I also think, Kanika, something very, very important is sometimes we look at these different companies and they seem very attractive. And, you have this romantic idea about, if you would love to work there, you would have this on your resume, when in fact, I think you need to also be thinking about, is it a good cultural fit for you? And you need to be willing to ask questions of them and not be afraid, so that you can understand if this is somewhere you want to work out at as well.
Very good piece right there. And especially being a Black woman in tech, there's so many different experiences and career heartbreaks that I had is because I chose a company that was not the right fit for me culturally, or even behavior fit. So it's very important that we do our due diligence to vet out these companies as much as they're vetting us. So we need to make sure that we are looking at them online through using tools like glassdoor.com, making sure we're connecting to other people who actually work at those companies. Because guess what? The job is friends with benefits. And sometimes every career relationship is not an ideal fit. So sometimes you may not want to be in a relationship long-term with that job because of different experiences that you've heard about or an experience that you may have yourself. So I definitely think it's important to do your research.
Very good, man. I hope that people are taking this all in, because you have really given us great insight into how you need to be navigating your career and becoming a brand. Now, when we come back, I know, Kanika, we've covered a lot of ground: mindset, strategy, execution. You've given some really great tips. But when we come back, it's our analyze, optimize, and maximize segment. And I really want you to so think of it like a lightning round, right? Like we covered around a lot of ground. What do we need to get the ball rolling from the information that you've shared today? So when we come back, folks, It's all about analyze, optimize, maximize so that you can apply the insight that Kanika Tover's been sharing with us today.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Welcome back, everyone. It's all about getting wealthy, and we've been learning how to get wealthy through our careers in spite of all of the doom and gloom that we're hearing. Sharing with us today, here with us today is Kanika Tover. She is author of Career Rehab, and she's really sharing with you how to position yourself to prosper in spite of this economic uncertainty. So, Kanika, it's our analyze, optimize, and maximize round. We've covered a lot of ground. And I'd like to really start with you just sharing. You talked a lot about doing your homework and all these different websites and how you go on social media. What advice would you give for folks to take this information and now synthesize it and apply it to their particular situation?
I definitely would want them to make sure that they are organized and they have some structure. Because finding a job is a whole nother job. You know, it is. It's a lot of work, right? So, and it can be overwhelming for people that are experiencing rejection. So I would say first, always, make sure that you are structured and what is going to be the days and times that you're going to apply to jobs. Have a schedule. Try to have something that fits well for you. And the next thing is that I would say, don't get discouraged because rejection could happen, right? You could get ghosted by recruiters. You could go on a job interview and never hear back from the hiring manager. Those things are, I hate to say it, in this job climate right now, they're pretty normal, but don't allow that to be a discouraging moment. So I want people to make sure that they understand that sometimes rejection is redirection. So you may get rejected from a company and it may be saving you from going into a bad situation. So understand that your time is going to happen. So those are just a few things that I would say that could be very, very difficult to deal with right now because there's so many people looking for opportunities.
And to that end, I love that you talked about the rejection aspect of it. I can think of so many auditions that I've had for different opportunities and didn't get. And then I look back and it was like, I'm glad I didn't get that opportunity. And so I love the fact that you said about that redirection, because it is true, but emotionally, sometimes that's hard to deal with. And so the other question I have for you, and you alluded to it earlier, and it's really, how do you optimize your time? How do you said you got to have a schedule. How do you optimize? You've talked about LinkedIn. How many jobs should you be actually applying for in your search for that great opportunity?
Different career experts would say you have to, focus on quantity. I think I would say I would focus on quality, only because of the fact that just because you put in 100 applications doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get 100 interviews, right? So I think that it's important to understand that you need to create a job search strategy that's focused in on not just applying to jobs on LinkedIn or on Indeed, but directly going to the career company's website and creating a profile at the companies you really want to work at. Making sure that you are building relationships with the people at those companies. Sometimes applicants are blindly applying to jobs and they're just pushing out applications, but they're not developing and fostering and nurturing relationships at the companies that they desire to work at, meaning connecting with recruiters, connecting with other employees that work at the company. Internal referrals is one of the best ways to get a job. If you work at a specific company that I want to go to, then I need to make sure that I'm building a relationship and connecting with professionals there. Sometimes we get opportunities and I get speaking engagements because somebody put my name in the hat, right? It's the same thing with a job interview. Somebody can put your name in the hat because they already work at the company. They're going to believe in an existing employee's recommendation before they believe in somebody blindly applying to a job that they've never met before. So
Tamika, that's great advice. That is great advice, because oftentimes opportunities are achieved not from what you know, but who you know.
Yes.
And having that inside track is so important. One of the strategies that I really convey to people in Wealthy You community is that you need to be leveraging LinkedIn and figuring out who your connections are, so that if you're applying for a job, so that you can connect with that person. Now, you may not know a person directly, but someone in your network, and that's a whole nother show that we need to do, Kanika, just about leveraging LinkedIn, right? But someone you know could know someone else, and then it's easier for them to introduce you in, as opposed that you doing some kind of blind outreach. You can simply ask that person, hey, you have an opportunity. There's an opportunity at this other company, and I see that you know that person. Would you be willing to introduce me to them? And something as simple as that can allow you to, have a significant advantage. But finally, we've talked a lot about online. How about taking it offline? What suggestions would you want to give someone around networking and finding that opportunity offline?
We were in the pandemic for over 2 years. And I think even myself, got conditioned to doing a lot of networking online. I really believe that it is time to get back in these streets, right? And it is time to start, as I say in my book, it's time to network like a hustler. It is time to network like a hustler. And when I mean network like a hustler, we have to get back into going to corporate happy hours. We have to get back into, and I'm not saying go and have a drink. I'm just saying go there and be where be in the places where the hiring managers, recruiters, and other professionals who could put our name in that hat that we were talking about. We need to find where they hanging out at. So I think here are a few places that I recommend people to start doing their professional networking. I recommend that you go to meetup.com and you find meetups through meetup.com, and you find technology meetups that are specific to your career goals. So if you want to make a career in AI, you need to be going to all of the AI meetups in your city, and you need to be building relationships with people at these meetups. So meetups are all over the United States. They happen monthly, and a lot of times they're in a public place, and you can go and build relationships there. Conferences are another great place. So I highly recommend looking for all the amazing technology conferences that are out there that are happening throughout the year, and try to go to the bigger ones, but try to go to the intimate and small ones, because that's where a lot of the good relationship building is happening, at the smaller and medium-sized conferences. And the last thing is to make sure that you are going to your current job-related events. See, this is where promotions happen. This is where you get to meet other people, is at the happy hours, at the holiday parties, at the all hands meetings, making sure that you're going to people's retirement parties. This is where the magic is happening for you in your current place, because sometimes we can grow where we're planted.
Kanika, that is so good. so good. You really practice what you preach, and so much of the insight that you're giving folks is something that they need to do. I do think that we have gotten comfortable being inside of our little cubby holes, our little virtual world, and it is, comfortable and convenient not having to go outside or drive or network or get parking. But I do really feel like the most important tip and nugget that gem, I want to call it a golden gem, that you just gave was really internally. Many times we're sitting 10 feet away from gold, but because we're not willing to put ourselves out there to get involved in company philanthropic endeavors, I think is a great way to meet folks where you can be promoted. Such sage advice. Finally, give our audience a takeaway that you feel could make a significant impact in their careers and in them being successful in spite of these uncertain times.
I think the last piece of advice I would give anyone is that we have to focus on, I like to say in my book, I have a chapter called Get Paid Now, and it's talking about how to get the money, power, and respect. And I think it's so important during these times that we don't really lean into our desperation, that we focus on getting the money, meaning that we focus on understanding how to negotiate our salary and get equal pay. But we also make sure that we're getting the power and the respect. The power is in your experience, is in your education, is in you leveling up and getting promoted. And the respect is just knowing that people should respect you. You should not deal with discrimination. You should not deal with sexual harassment. You should not deal with any level of toxic in work environments. So make sure that you're getting all three in your job offer. You're getting the money, power, and respect. And that's what a brand is. That's what a brand does.
Thank you so much, Kanika. This was a wonderful segment. You've given us so many specific strategies, tactics that people can execute on. Thank you for coming on Get Wealthy and showing us how to get wealthy in our careers.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. When we come back, the 3 takeaways from today's show.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause, too long have others spoken for us.
We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us.
Invest in black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, I hope you've enjoyed our Get Wealthy show today, all about recession-proofing your career and helping you understand that in spite of these uncertain times, you can still thrive. Here's the 3 takeaways from today's show. First, seek opportunities in all industry. Don't get caught up in the hype around all of these tech companies laying off. There are tech opportunities in all industries. Secondly, enhance your skills through certification. You don't have to start thinking about going out and getting another degree. There are things that you can do to enhance your skill set now and become more marketable. And then finally, leverage your network. Leverage your network. Most importantly, you have everything you need to be everything you need to be, but you need to ask for help. And most of that help are the people around you. So don't be afraid to ask for it. That's going to do it for me on this episode of Get Wealthy. I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach. Thank you for joining in only on Black Star Network.